Okay, welcome to all of you. So we'll resume from where we left off last Sunday. Before we start, I'll just offer prayers first and then we'll resume. Om Jnana Timirandasya Gyananjana Shlakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Caitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sagana Raghunatan Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakan Vitamscha Namam Vishnu Padaya Krishna Preshtaya Bhutale Srimate Jayapataka Swaminiti Namine Nama Acharya Padaya Nitai Kripa Pradayine Gaurakata Dhamadaya Nagaragrama Tarine Namam Vishnu Padaya Krishna Preshtaya Bhutale Srimate Gopi Paranadana Dase Iti Namine Namam Vishnu Padaya Krishna Preshtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nivishishunyavadi Pasyatya Deshatarine Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Paridanam Bhavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namah Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Mukam Karoti Vachalam Pangum Langayate Girim Yatkripatamaham Bande Shri Gurudin Tharinam Yatkripatamaham Bande Paramananda Madhavam Shri Chaitanya Ishwaram Katanchana Smrite Yasmin Dushkaram Sukaram Bhavet Vismrite Viparitam Syat Shri Chaitanyam Namamitam. Okay, so it's showing the screen here. Minimize it.
Yeah, share.
Minimize it.
You want to share the screen?
Yeah, but where are the tabs?
Share.
Tabs.
Share.
Tabs have to be there. Right?
Yeah, first. Okay. And
Okay, so we'll go on with where we started. Maybe sorry. Last class. I'll read one short paragraph before we resume with, so that there's proper continuity. We ended with this paragraph. Bhaktivinoda Thakur and his son were not only interested in defeating Mayavadis and other unbonafide religious expressions, however, rather the main thrust of their movement was to teach the Yuga Dharma, the chanting of the holy name of Krishna. It is in this tradition that Srila Prabhupada appeared and with this mission. So I discussed last class how these two are the definitions of what is a Saraswata, which means Saraswata means the followers of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, And Srila Prabhupada identifies the members of the International Society for Krishna Consciousness as Saraswatas. So it's a two-pronged definition. One is they propagate the chanting of the holy name of the Lord. The other is they defeat Mayavadis and other unbonafide religious expressions, as Satsarup Maharaj puts it here. Okay, so the next paragraph. It is stated in the Caitanya Charitamrita, Kali Kalera Dharma Krishna Nama Sankirtana, Krishna Shakti Vina Nahetara Pravartana. The fundamental religious system in the age of Kali is the chanting of the holy name of Krishna. Unless empowered by Krishna, one cannot propagate the Sankirtan movement. Chaitanya Charitamrita Antilila 7.11. This verse underlines Srila Prabhupada's specialness. He was empowered to spread the Sankirtan movement all over the world. It was he who fulfilled the prediction of Lord Caitanya, who fulfilled the prediction Lord Caitanya had made 500 years earlier, that his name would be spread to every town and village, not just of India, but of the world. When we read this, the first thing that we need to remember, or the most important thing we need to remember, is that Prabhupada, when it says that he spread the Sankirtan movement means a movement of pure devotees, or movement of devotees who are interested in attaining love of Godhead exclusively. That is what it means. It is not referring to a movement where devotees are interested in all kinds of things and also trying to attain love of Godhead. No, it means that a movement where the members are not interested in anything else other than attaining pure love for Krishna. That is what is the meaning of spreading the Sankirtana movement. Srila Prabhupada's very human story of how he carried out this mission can capture our hearts. His courage and dedication inspire us to follow him, to love him, and to want to do great things on his behalf. He fought against great odds to carry out the spiritual master's legacy. He came to America at an advanced age with only a trunk full of books and the equivalent of $8 in his pocket. Yet he was the wealthiest philanthropist. To accept his gift fully requires that we become exclusively his followers. This is an important word, exclusively his followers. As Prabhupada is no ordinary guru, so our following of him cannot be ordinary or diffused. Rather, it must be focused on his mood, his teachings, and his mission. Next section is called Guru Nishta in ISKCON. This particular section specifically refers to Srila Prabhupada. It could also refer to his followers, but generally here, Satsarup Maharaj is writing it in the context of Srila Prabhupada. Guru Nishta in ISKCON means our relationship with Srila Prabhupada. That's the context here. I mean, how is he Guru? He's not a Diksha Guru, but he's the founder Acharya. As such, he's Prabhupada, the master at whose feet all other masters sit. So this particular heading refers to Guru Nishta in relation to ISKCON members, how they look at Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada's mission is non-different from Srila Rupa Goswami's mission. In his purport to Chaitanya Charitamrita Antilila 117, Srila Prabhupada writes, the special function of Srila Rupa Goswami is to establish the feelings of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. These feelings are his desires that his special mercy be spread throughout the world in this Kali Yuga. His desire is that all over the world, everyone in every village and every town know of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and his Sankirtan movement. These are the inner feelings of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Sri Rupa Goswami committed to writing all these feelings of the Lord. Now again, by the mercy of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the same feeling are being spread all over the world by the servants of the Goswamis, and devotees who are pure and simple will appreciate this attempt. Srila Prabhupada also writes, advancement in Krishna consciousness depends on the attitude of the follower. This is from the Nectar of Instruction introduction. All the Shastras declare the necessity to accept or follow. I think instead of, that's a typo there. All the Shastra declare the necessity to accept or follow a bona fide spiritual master in parampara. Following implies accepting the spiritual master's particular mood and emphasis in his relationship with Krishna. Srila Prabhupada perfectly exemplified such following in his own relationship with Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, as was proven by his successful execution of the mission. Srila Prabhupada's own mood towards his Guru Maharaj was one of exclusive devotion and attention. Please note that, exclusive devotion and attention. We can follow that example. Guru Nishtha is the most important point in spiritual life. In a lecture in Vrindavan, 28th of November, 1976, Srila Prabhupada states, all you are young Westerners. You never study Vedanta, but you can surprise many so-called Vedantists how to understand Krishna, how it has become possible, simply by your firm faith in your spiritual master and Krishna and chanting Hare Krishna. That's all. Yasya deve para bhaktir yata deve tata gurau. This is the Vedic process. If we have firm faith in Guru and firm faith in Krishna, Guru Krishna Kripaya Paya Bhakti Lata Beach, then you get the seedling of Bhakti Lata. There is a tendency now that time is passing to see things more objectively. Technically, that should be within quotes, but you can get the meaning of what Maharaj is trying to say. To see things more objectively and to think that perhaps Srila Prabhupada wasn't so special. After all, he's just one more link in the parampara chain of innumerable gurus stemming from Krishna. Actually, ISKCON devotees are often accused by those outside of ISKCON of being too exclusive in their devotion. Why should we claim a special place for Prabhupada or for any other guru for that matter? Even within ISKCON, we can hear the advanced realization of other devotees or see them travel around the world, gain followers, write their own books. A follower of Prabhupada won't allow such minimization to creep into his faith. Srila Prabhupada accomplished something so extraordinary that any comparison to others becomes a minimization of his position. Okay, so there is something that I want to speak on this. Just a short sentence: 1 billion followers of Prabhupada cannot become equal to one Prabhupada. That's a basic thing which I always say, that 1 billion followers cannot equal one Prabhupada. So that's, I think, as far as the members of ISKCON are concerned. What about outside ISKCON? So that's what Satsuru Maharaj is talking about. I mean, that's one of the things he's talking about here, where he says that actually ISKCON devotees are often accused by those outside ISKCON of being too exclusive in their devotion. So there's one article which I want to, I mean, this is a compilation. I just want to share this. How not to minimize Srila Prabhupada. Now this is, I took this from a Facebook post. This was on Srila Prabhupada's appearance date 2018. Now this is written by a devotee who leads a preaching initiative. He writes, I have been bothered by something for a long time in the telling of Srila Prabhupada's story. He is often described as the first person to bring Krishna consciousness to the West. The issue I have with that is, in terms of practices involved, practically everything he thought was being done in the West by other yogi groups well before Srila Prabhupada arrived. Kirtan, study of Gita, Sattvic lifestyle, ashram living, Krishna Bhaktas, ashram living. Krishna Bhaktas may say, if you're not doing those things for Krishna, you're not really doing them. And in that way, Prabhupada was first. But how does that sound to someone outside the practice? Especially in the decades of retrospect, we have now far removed from Prabhupada's potent physical association. The idea that Srila Prabhupada was first to introduce these things just reeks of farcical, head in the sand fanaticism to lots of thoughtful, honestly spiritual people. lots of thoughtful, honestly spiritual people. For me, the idea that Srila Prabhupada was the last in a set of waves of great yogis, notice what he's saying, great yogis, feels much more satisfying and respectful to the entirety of Krishna's arrangement. Not just the part that suits my group best. Anyone who spent time in the ocean knows the last wave in the set is the biggest, the one that completes the influence of the ones before. I have never met a practitioner from another group who doesn't want to respect Srila Prabhupada, even appreciate him. They just don't want to have to dismiss their teachers as useless to do it. Srila Prabhupada's life and precepts are sufficient on their own merit. He needs no hyperbole or pretense to stand alone. Everyone knows to save the best for the last. Would Krishna send his closest man first? Happy birthday, Srila Prabhupada. Now, this is exactly the kind of thing that Satsarup Maharaj is referring to when he says that with passage of time, we develop a tendency to look at things from a so-called objective perspective. Now, this is a classic example of what it means to minimize Srila Prabhupada. Instead of me responding to this, there is a fantastic response by a devotee who responded to this post on the same on this devotee's page. Here is a response. This is a perfect response. Now he compares Prabhupada. Now the original writer compares Prabhupada to one wave, the last wave in a ocean. Now this response, you can see what he says here. Waves are part of the same ocean, but Srila Prabhupada has nothing to do with gurus who came before him. Now, when you say an ocean, what are the waves that he could refer to? You could refer to waves as acharyas, either in our line or in any other bona fide Vaishnava lines who may have gone before. But you don't have anyone from the Vaishnava line who went to West before. So there's nothing whom you can compare Prabhupada with anyway. So that's why he's saying waves are part of the same ocean, but Srila Prabhupada has nothing to do with gurus who came before him. People he consistently distinguished from himself by calling them rascals and cheaters. He was the first because he gave the real thing, where others gave only a counterfeit. And anyone who is hearing from Srila Prabhupada would never say otherwise. It is not fanaticism, but this is the simple truth that Srila Prabhupada himself taught. So a sincere devotee must understand these points and explain them without compromise. That is the entire point of Bhagavad Gita as it is. Others presented Bhagavad Gita in the West before, but it is all misleading nonsense. They deserve no more credit than criminals who counterfeit money. Actually, even the most neophyte bhakta is more advanced than these stone-hearted swamis who came to the West before Srila Prabhupada, because these big shot kangaroos never became devotees, giving up impersonalism despite hearing and chanting about Krishna. So he's making a very correct point that you cannot, Prabhupada is not one wave in an ocean of, it's not like Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu where so many acharyas went there and Prabhupada also went to the West. No, I mean, there's no comparison. Prabhupada is totally different. You never had a Vaishnava acharya who went to the West. Everybody who went to the West were cheaters. That's the point that he's trying to make here in this response. A very good point. And these points can all be easily backed up by many evidences, whereas there are none to support the anarthas expressed in the stupid post, which means he's responding to the original post. He refers to them as anarthas expressed in this stupid post. Okay. Now then he gives some references also, interesting ones. Yogi Amrit Desai. No, I am not. I was telling all the devotees here. I said Srila Prabhupada is the first man who brought bhakti in the West, where it is needed most, because there are so much in the head, thinking. This path of love is so profound. Prabhupada, you see, present a real, genuine thing. Yogi Amrit Desai, it's very genuine. Prabhupada, it will act. Yogi Amrit Desai, that is why it is growing so beautifully, because it is genuine. Prabhupada, and it is the duty of the Indians to give them the genuine thing. That is Parāmpārā. Before me, all these swamis and yogis were there to cheat them. Yogi Amrit Desai. No, they were afraid to give the truth because they are afraid they will not be accepted. Prabhupada, they do not know what is truth. Laughter, not afraid. Why? If one is on the platform of truth, why you should be afraid? So Prabhupada, he's going even one more step further. He's saying, no, it's not because they were afraid, because they don't know the truth. One who knows the truth, why should he be afraid? Because they don't know what is the truth, they're afraid. Very simple point that Prabhupada makes. Okay. Anyway, the Yogi Amrit Desai had good appreciation for Srila Prabhupada. If you look at the whole conversation, you'll see later on. I'm not present the excerpt here. That Yogi Amrit Desai actually says that we were afraid to preach about Bhakti Yoga also, but you have made it easy and things like that. So this is from conversation Yogi Amrit Desai of Kripalu Ashram. Of course, we know that we don't follow the teachings of Kripalu, nor do we accept it. But Prabhupada had a friendly relationship with everyone. But you can see here, he even was seemingly mild point. In fact, Yogi Amrit Desai is appreciating Prabhupada. But still, Prabhupada is very clear. Even though someone is appreciating, it's very clear. They did not know what is the truth. He's not allowing him to get away with their explanation of they should be afraid. They were afraid. No, they did not know the truth, he says. Okay, this is in Pennsylvania, USA, January 2nd, 1977. He is with Amrit Desai of Kripalu Ashram. But that conversation happened in Mumbai. Okay. And this is an excerpt from a letter to Karandar Prabhu. No compromise. Ramakrishna, avatars, yogis, everyone was enemy to Guru Maharaj. He never compromised. Some God brothers complained that this preaching was chopping technique and it would not be successful. But we have seen that those who criticized, they fell down. For my part, I have taken up the policy of my Guru Maharaj. No compromise. All these so-called scholars, scientists, philosophers who do not accept Krishna are nothing more than rascals, fools, lowest of mankind, etc. So you go on with your work. It is very encouraging to me. Thank you. Your ever well-wisher, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami. This is from Letter to Karandara, Bhaktivedanta Manor, July 27, 1973. Then it's a very humorous conversation. Prabhupada, not difficult. Nothing is difficult. For the time being, it is difficult. But in due course of time, it will be very easy. Now, who knew that in Europe and America or all over the world, Hare Krishna will go on? Bon Maharaj left the field. Others left the field. You see, other Swamis came. They talked all nonsense, yoga, this and that, nose pressing, eyes pressing, all finished. Now, Hare Krishna is going on. Now, people, the nose presser and eyes presser, they are no more important. Is it not? Now, our men go and challenge these rascals. And in New York, they did it. Devotee, yes. And they're afraid of our troops. Laughter. They're afraid. Madhudvisha. One of those nose pressers, he was speaking and he said, these Hare Krishna people, they like me very much. They always come to my lectures and they sell all the books, all their books, and they go away before I start to talk. You go on pressing your nose. We make our business and go away. Laughter. So this is a room conversation devotee, 2nd of July, 1974 in Melbourne. Okay, so let's get back. So this is what it means to maintain that exclusive devotion to Srila Prabhupada. Because it is that exclusive devotion is not based on some sentiment. It is based on factual reality. Factual reality. There were no yogis. There were no genuine people before Prabhupada went to the West. Not a single genuine person had gone. We should recognize that fact. And we should not be afraid to understand that fact, nor explain it as Prabhupada is explaining. Of course, we can't do it in when Prabhupada is explaining, he's doing it out of compassion. We can't do it to say that, oh, we're the best. Anyway, the point is that Prabhupada never compromised. And we are nor are we expected to appreciate the Mayavadis, appreciate the scholars, and appreciate the yogis. And that's not ISKCON's business. That is not a Saraswata. We are supposed to defeat anything which is opposing to Krishna consciousness. This is the nature of an ISKCON devotee. He or she wants to develop love for Krishna by following strictly in Srila Prabhupada's footsteps and in the mood that he taught. It will be to the credit of Srila Prabhupada's disciples and succeeding generations of followers to continue with the fixed determination in their glorification of His divine grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Very clearly saying, Srila Prabhupada disciples and succeeding generation of followers to continue with this fixed determination in their glorification of His divine grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Such devotion is not fanatical. Prahlad Maharaj expressed a similar sentiment when describing his feeling towards his own spiritual master, Narada Muni. My dear Lord, O Supreme Personality of Godhead, because of my association with material desires, one after another, I was gradually falling into a blind well full of snakes, following the general populace. But your servant, Narada Muni, kindly accepted me as a disciple and instructed me how to achieve this transcendental position. Therefore, my first duty is to serve him. How could I leave his service? Srila Prabhupada actually quotes this verse in his prayer to his spiritual master when he reaches America. This is from Bhagavatam 7:9-28. I am sure that Srila Prabhupada would encourage this kind of exclusive devotion. He expressed such undiverted attention toward his own spiritual master, and he tried to protect ISKCON from the various outside influences that could disturb it or that would misunderstand his application of Krishna consciousness for Westerners. Such exclusive devotion is not the property of only those devotees who joined ISKCON before 1977. It is the property of all those who wish to follow Srila Prabhupada. We can cultivate that exclusive devotion to Srila Prabhupada by hearing about his life, studying his teachings, praying to him, and rendering service to him according to his desires. Now, I remember an anecdote where Prabhupada, when he when he laid the foundation stone for the Anantasesha installation for when they dug the pit and he laid the foundation stone or the Anantasesha installation for the temple of the Vedic planetarium. So it was an occasion where so many of Srila Prabhupada's god brothers were present. They were all sannyasis, very erudite members of the Gaudiya Math. Of course, it had splintered by then, but that whole collection of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur's followers from that collection. So they had come. And Prabhupada made it a point to actually make Mother Malati speak on that occasion. Now, Prabhupada had sannyasis, Prabhupada had other devotees, but he made it a point to make Mother Malati speak on that occasion. Because Prabhupada wanted to make a point very clear that ultimately it is a question of Yasya Deve Parabhakti. One who has implicit faith in Krishna and the Guru. He wanted to show that person is special. So after Mother Malati gave the class, Prabhupada made a point. He told his god brothers, you see, this Malati said she's one of my disciples. And he said, she can cut her throat for me and I can cut my throat for her. So the point is that this is the actual formula for ISKCON success. That Prabhupada always would say that my disciples, they may not have all the different elements of Vedic culture because of being brought up in the West. But they had one thing which is very exclusive, which is very unique, very special, which is what that exclusive faith in Prabhupada. If Prabhupada said, that is it, finished. So that thing that they don't know anything, they didn't know anything other than Srila Prabhupada. That is the mood which brings success to the Krishna consciousness movement. Srila Prabhupada himself said this, that I didn't know anything except the words of my Guru Maharaj. So Prabhupada's followers, disciples, you could see the reason for the success of the Krishna consciousness movement is that exclusive devotion to Prabhupada. Now, whenever we are now expanding or we may encounter some difficulties, the first question to ask is this: do we have that exclusive devotion to Srila Prabhupada the way Prabhupada's followers exhibited pre-1977? I don't want to comment on what happened post-1977, at least pre-1977. That was the same mood in which Prabhupada surrendered to his Guru Maharaj. So and it's very tangible, it's very palpable when we read the Lilamrita. This is the purpose of our study of Srila Prabhupada Lilamrita, to develop that intensity, to develop that kind of surrender. Srila Prabhupada said the most confidential thing that you can get from the spiritual master is his mood. So the most confidential thing that we can get from Srila Prabhupada is his mood. That mood of Vyavasayatmika Buddhihi Ekeha Kurunandana. And Prabhupada said that when he read Vishnu Chakravarti Thakur's purport to that verse, he made that his life's goal, to dedicate himself to the instructions of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. And he would say, I did not deviate even an inch from my spiritual master. Just like here, he's in the quote that we read a little earlier, where he's saying that other God brothers, they criticized Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur for saying that criticized Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur for what they refer to as the chopping technique. Sadhu is meant to chop. The very word sadhu means one who cuts. Cut what? Cut through illusion. So this is Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur's greatest contribution and Srila Prabhupada's greatest contribution, that they spoke the truth uncompromisingly. They did not accept even a small, you can see here, the Yogi Amrit Desai we saw earlier, he's trying to glorify Prabhupada. Even that he's not accepting it. He's accepting it provided it's right. He says, no, why afraid? No, it's not just a question of being afraid. You don't know the truth. If you know the truth, why you're afraid? That's the whole point. Okay, anyway, the point that I was trying to make here is that Satsvarupa Maharaj writes here in the paragraph, such exclusive devotion is not the property of only those devotees who joined ISKCON before 1977. It is a property of all those who wish to follow Srila Prabhupada. If we say that we are followers of Srila Prabhupada, the first symptom and the most important symptom is, are we exclusively devoted to Srila Prabhupada the way Prabhupada disciples were devoted to him pre-1977 and the way Srila Prabhupada was devoted to Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, to his own spiritual master, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. So this is the meaning of saying, the moment we say Prabhupada's follower, this is the first thing that we have to look at ourselves. And when someone is a Prabhupada follower, this is a real genuine Prabhupada follower, one who's exclusively devoted to Srila Prabhupada. Okay, Srila Prabhupada inspires our faith. Since devotion to Prabhupada necessarily includes following his instructions, it is useful to know what types of things please Srila Prabhupada. This is very important because devotion to Prabhupada is not a question of on his Vyasa Puja or his disappearance day or Guru Puja Kirtan, Jai Prabhupada, Jai Prabhupada. That's fine. That's fine. That's perfectly legitimate, but that's not enough. Devotion to Prabhupada, the essence of it means not just verbally glorifying as Jai Prabhupada, but to actually follow his teachings. When he was confronted with the question, Srila Prabhupada, how can we please you most? Prabhupada usually didn't offer a list of service or preaching engagements, but he made a simple statement: if you love Krishna, I have noted in your letter that you want to serve me. I only want that all you, my disciples, always think of Krishna and never forget him for a moment. In this way, you can conquer Krishna. He becomes so attracted by pure devotion that he gives himself to his devotee. And if you get Krishna, then what do you want more? Beyond that, however, Srila Prabhupada instructed us how to come to the stage of remembering Krishna at every moment. And that constituted the basis of his ISKCON movement. In order for us to engage in this movement, we needed to have faith. Srila Prabhupada created that faith in his followers, most of whom were hampered by the cynicism born of living in an age of atheism and sense enjoyment. We were able to have faith in Prabhupada because he's renounced, because he was saintly, because he was so honestly and obviously dedicated to God. There were no scandals in his life. He was able to create faith in the minds of those who had come to believe that God was dead, or as the East Village other put it, God is present only in LSD. LSD is the chemical. Now, the point is here, it is interesting that Prabhupada actually created faith when people are hampered by cynicism. Like they rejected wholesale authority during the time when Prabhupada went to the West. I mean, complete outsale rejection of authority. But yet, Prabhupada actually created that following. Even if you look at Prabhupada Lilamrita in the, I don't know if this edition that we're going to read has some of those reviews by scholars. So one review, I think it was Harvey Cox or Ladishin, where he says that where he says that what is very fascinating in this biography is the willingness of young men and women to simply surrender to someone. How is that possible? Because that is the whole interesting thing. It is an age where authority is rejected. But in that same age, you see that young people are just willing to surrender to an authority. That is because of Prabhupada was established in pure Krishna consciousness. Now, what happens when someone is established in pure Krishna consciousness is when they come in touch with someone, they transmit that experience of Krishna consciousness. They just transmit that experience. And I had that same this thing in my own life, where I had read so much philosophy. But when I read Prabhupada's books, after all that, I was so tired, exhausted. But when I read Prabhupada's books, when I read Krishna book, it was an experience. Krishna is there. It was like living in Vrindavan. And after I put down the book, the experience kept growing spontaneously. That's what brought me to ISKCON. So that is the power of a pure devotee. In their words, in their presence, they transmit the experience of Krishna. It's an experience. Experience something undeniable, right? You experience something, you experienced it. There's nothing to think about it mentally or objectively. It's an experience. So how can an experience be? How is it deniable? Of course, it's a dream is a different thing, but in real life, you experience something, and then you're driven by that experience. That's a very tangible reality. This is what Prabhupada created. In fact, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in Chaitanya Charitamrita, he explains that the highest Vaishnava is simply by his presence. You helplessly chant the holy name. Helplessly means you can't do anything except pick up your beads and chant Hare Krishna mantra. I had one experience of this. I remember in 2000 and I think it was 2002 or 2003. His Grace Ravindra Swarup Prabhu was the chairman of the GBC, and at that time he said that he wrote some papers, and he made this point that in order for members of ISKCON to follow leaders should set a very high standard. So he said, as the GBC chairman, I will chant 64 rounds, and during I think during Kartik, or whether it was throughout his tenure, I don't know, but at least during Kartik, he spent the whole month of Kartik chanting 64 rounds, reading, associating with devotees. And right after that, he came to Bangalore, and I was there. I happened to meet him there, and that experience just remains fresh in my mind. The moment I came into his presence and I started talking to him, it was like irresistibly we were drawn to chant Hare Krishna. I mean, after I finished that talk with him, when I went home also, where's my beads? I mean, it's just that sense of being drawn to chant the holy names of the Lord. So this is what Lord Chaitanya is talking about, that when someone is properly established in Krishna consciousness, just by their presence, you feel irresistibly drawn to chant the holy names of the Lord. Now, the same principle applies to all of us. So it is not that, okay, this obstacle is there, that obstacle is there. There can be millions of obstacles. And we can give excuses also. Preaching is not working because of this, because of that. But the first thing that we have to examine is that, do we have exclusive devotion to Prabhupada? Second thing we have to examine, are we following? This is what is it? What Satsuraman is trying to make here, the point that he's trying to make here. It's not enough to just have exclusive devotion. Exclusive devotion means, since devotion to Prabhupada necessarily includes following his instruction, it begins this paragraph, this section like that. So it means to follow. Prabhupada would always say, why 16 rounds? Why not unlimited rounds? So even during initiations, he would always say this, that 16 rounds, when devotees would say, okay, how many rounds to chant? They would say 16 rounds. Prabhupada would often say 16 rounds minimum. So that was Prabhupada. So whenever we have free time, are we drawn to chanting of the word? Are we determined to follow Prabhupada's instructions? When we do that, then first of all, we have that experience of Krishna consciousness. And because of having that experience of Krishna consciousness, it is a fully satisfying experience. It is a very happy experience. And then we're able to transmit that experience. And when we transmit the experience, then it doesn't matter. All the obstacles collapse. Whether people have problem with authority, whether people have this problem, political correctness, incorrectness, it doesn't matter. That purity can cut through all the barriers. Okay. He also created faith by his strong lecturing, in which he not only appealed to Shastric authority, but to logic. Let's come to reason, he would often say. The teachings that we are eternal spirit souls, servants of God, and that real liberation is not to abandon our individuality, but to fulfill our relationship with Krishna. He presented with strong yet simple arguments. We became convinced because the philosophy made sense. He made sense. His philosophy made sense. He made sense. He could answer all doubts, and he continues to do so in his books. Srila Prabhupada's whole life was gloriously supportive of his own faith in Guru and Krishna. Because he embodied faith, he became worthy of our faith in a world where he'd been cheated and disappointed again and again. So that is the critical element of our Krishna consciousness, that faith. So when people can see that faith, they get attracted, they get drawn to that faith. So, the point here is that, the point that Sachimar is making here in this last paragraph is that Prabhupada's name is Bhakti Vedanta. So Prabhupada write in the Bhagavad Gita, you can see Prabhupada clearly says, religion without philosophy is sentiment, and philosophy without religion is mental speculation. So Bhakti Vedanta means we practice the science with our heart. It is a science, first of all, but we practice the science not only with our head, but with also our heart. That's what it means, Bhakti Vedanta. So not just some sentimentalists, nor are we just some Vedantists. We are Bhakti Vedantists, followers of the Bhakti Vedanta. Okay, gratitude and obligation. When faith develops in a devotee, he or she naturally feels gratitude and obligation towards the spiritual master. This sense of gratitude and obligation helps Srila Prabhupada's followers to become the limbs by which he fulfills his own spiritual master's order. We all know that any Westerner who has heard the words Hare Krishna must have had some kind of contact with Srila Prabhupada or his followers, if only from a distance. It was Srila Prabhupada who made Hare Krishna a household word. Only when Srila Prabhupada is traveling with a stopover in Athens, Greece, he overheard some young man jokingly singing the Hare Krishna mantra. Prabhupada himself was amazed at how far the holy name had spread. Just to contemplate that, what we were before, what we have become, that we have learned to aspire for the highest goal of life, and that all this has become possible, not only for us, but for hundreds and thousands of people, where Srila Prabhupada's mercy can only increase our thankfulness. Gratitude and obligation toward the Guru are expressed through service. The point is, okay, let me finish that. Following the spiritual master's orders is the real test of love and faith. When a follower is serious about a relationship with Srila Prabhupada, he or she will begin to receive knowledge from him. The spiritual master gives that knowledge freely, unofficially. When the follower begins to feel gratitude, that is an open acknowledgement of debt. Whether or not we acknowledge our debt openly, however, the debt is there. We have accepted something from the Guru and we are obligated to reciprocate with him. That is the meaning of Guru Dakshina. What did Srila Prabhupada want? So when we say obligated, what are we supposed to do? What does Srila Prabhupada want? Then what is Srila Prabhupada? That we should love Krishna, yes, and that we should follow his instructions in order to attain that love. This is evidenced by the fact that as soon as people become serious, Srila Prabhupada became serious. Srila Prabhupada introduced them to the traditional relationship of Guru and disciple. He also introduced them to the 4 regulative principles: no meat eating, no illicit sex, no intoxication, and no gambling. He established the standard that all initiated followers should chant 16 rounds of the Hare Krishna mantra a day, both to purify their hearts and to awaken their dormant love for Krishna. We cannot overemphasize Srila Prabhupada's importance in our life as the giver of the holy name. That was a special contribution. Therefore, to follow this formula of avoiding sinful life and chanting and hearing about Krishna is the basic program Srila Prabhupada expected his followers to pursue. He also wanted us to cooperate with each other and to preach to the non-devotees. Following the order of the spiritual master is not simply sentiment. The real substance of the spiritual master's association is his Vani, his teaching. We should know what it is, feel attached to it, and serve it with our life's energy. Satisfaction of the self-realized spiritual master is a secret of advancement in spiritual life. Inquiries and submission constitute the proper combination for spiritual understanding. Unless there is submission and service, inquiries from the learned spiritual master will not be effective. Not only should one hear submissively from the spiritual master, but one must also get a clear understanding from him in submission and service and inquiries. 434 Bhagavad Gita purport. So here, Satsvarup Maharaj is making this point that when we develop that faith, we begin to feel obligated. We feel gratitude. So when we feel gratitude, what do we think? Oh, I have received something from this person. How shall I repay him? How shall I repay him? I have a debt. He has given me something which no one has ever given me. What do I do? So then we study what Prabhupada wanted us to do. So he wanted us to make our lives perfect and to preach the Krishna conscious movement. It is not one or the other. Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says, of all the devotees, there are two. Some devotees are good in their practice and some devotees are good in preaching. But the best among all the devotees is that person who's good in practice and in preaching. So we have to come to that stage of both practicing and preaching. Practicing alone is not enough. And to preach, we have to preach. Preach means you teach Krishna consciousness properly. Not just transmit faith. We can't transmit faith sentimentally. We can transmit faith only when we represent that faith properly through the teachings. It's not some sentimental thing. We represent that faith through the teachings. So we have to be dedicated to the instruction that Srila Prabhupada has given in his books. There's no way out of it. Unless we are devoted to reading Srila Prabhupada's books, we won't be able to understand what his instructions are and how to carry them out. Following Srila Prabhupada's order is the only way to be Guru. Srila Prabhupada said that it's not difficult to be a Guru. Guru means following one's own spiritual master in Parampara and repeating what Krishna has said. We have already discussed that following the spiritual master means following both his orders and his emphasis. That's an important point. It's like, here he's trying to say that Prabhupada, it's not just enough, okay, I'm following Prabhupada's order, but we should also follow his emphasis, which means how to get his emphasis, you have to study all of his teachings. Then we get the proper emphasis. Otherwise, we'll start emphasizing something which Prabhupada did not emphasize. Of course, all of Krishna consciousness is important, but only when you study his overall teachings, only when we study his overall teachings and everything of it, then we understand what is Prabhupada's emphasis. Emphasis is very clear. That the particular mood is make your life perfect, make others' lives also perfect. Specifically in ISKCON, this means chanting 16 rounds of the Hare Krishna mantra every day, following the regulative principles and rendering service in ISKCON in the mood in which Srila Prabhupada requested. A spiritual master is not measured by the size of his aura or his capacity to generate electric shocks while he's teaching. And neither is he measured by whether or not he reveals to the disciples their individual Swarupa Siddhi. The qualification is that he is always serving his spiritual master purely in thoughts, words, and deeds. Vacha, Kaya, Manasa, Kaya, and Vacha. Manasa means mind, Kaya means body, and Vacha means words. So thoughts refers to the mind, words refer to Vacha, speech, and deeds refer to the body. So generally, as in school, the critical student becomes the next professor. Through relevant inquiry and service, the test of his understanding to the teacher, the student is trained to teach. Lord Chaitanya himself preaches the simple principle to Kurma Brahmana. Instruct everyone to follow the orders of Lord Sri Krishna as they are given in Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam. In this way, become a spiritual master and try to liberate everyone in this land. Chaitanya Charitamrita 7.128. Lord Chaitanya goes on to say, if you follow these regulative principles, we will meet here, or rather, you will never lose my company. That's a very important point, that if you follow these regulative principles, we will meet here, or rather, you will never lose my company. So these regulative principles are not just some moral principles and all. It's a principle of association with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. In fact, if you look at, they're the principles of cognition. If you look at Bhagavatam, Prabhupada writes that one can perceive Krishna in every page of the Bhagavatam if one can hear the Bhagavatam attentively. Very clearly he says, one can perceive Krishna, he says, and I don't know if he used the word perceive, but anyway, one can see Krishna in every page of the Bhagavatam if one hears with rapt attention. Then he says that no one can hear with rapt attention unless they are purified in their mind. Then he says no one can be purified in their mind unless they are purified in their action. Then he says no one can be purified in their action unless they are purified in the habits of eating, sleeping, mating, and defending. Which means that these four regulative principles are a means for us to see Krishna in every page of the Bhagavatam, that perception. So these regulative principles are not some principles, okay, if you don't do this, Krishna will punish. It is just not some moral principles of punishment or reward. These are principles of cognition. Here also Lord Chaitanya is saying this. If you follow these regulative principles, we'll again meet here, or rather, you will lose my company. Or, sorry, you will never lose my company. So the idea is that the regulative principles are a means of associating with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur quoted this verse on the occasion of his Vyasa Puja in February of 1936. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur claimed that to set oneself up as a representative of God can be seen as arrogant. He said that by listening to the words of praise directed at him by his disciples, however, he was actually discharging a duty on behalf of his spiritual master. I have therefore to practice to sit at these assemblies in the garb of a wise person and to listen to the words of praise relying on the dictum that the command of the master is above questioning. If, however, I am thereby led to suppose that it's a good thing to listen to one's own praises, my worthlessness is published to all the world in a glaring manner by such silly thinking. I am obliged to accept this honor in order that the current of the word of God may not be obstructed and his perennial flow may not cease. Our judgment in this matter is different from that of persons who listen to their praises or pampering their arrogance by such audiencing. In other words, accepting the role of Guru Niskam is one of the duties that Srila Prabhupada has designated for his disciples. His disciples should therefore perform this service as a duty with the aim to spread Prabhupada's fame and mission and not to pamper their arrogance. It was not Srila Prabhupada's mood to emphasize our own genius or spiritual status as something separate from our identity as his disciples. Therefore, our teaching should be in line with him, and we should not feel inclined to discuss topics which Srila Prabhupada himself did not discuss. Being Guru Niskam means strictly following Srila Prabhupada's examples and remaining always his servant. Srila Prabhupada said about himself, my credit is not that I am a great scholar or a great devotee, neither can I perform any magic. Rather, the one qualification I have is that I have 100% faith in my spiritual master. Srila Prabhupada did not change his own spiritual master's teachings or emphasize those things that Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur chose not to emphasize. Srila Prabhupada claimed that this loyalty was the source of his power to spread the Krishna consciousness movement all over the world. So, I'll speak on this a little later because after the next section. The qualification of Srila Prabhupada's followers, that's the process for us to follow. But in ISKCON, there have been many failures in following Prabhupada to this degree that have led to disappointment. Because Srila Prabhupada's books are not different from himself, people still come to Krishna consciousness through Srila Prabhupada's preaching. People still make the commitment to chant the holy name because they've been convinced by Srila Prabhupada's encouragement. People have still decided to pursue a guru-disciple relationship based on the power that Srila Prabhupada himself displayed as a spiritual master. Even though they're joining after Srila Prabhupada's disappearance, their attraction to Srila Prabhupada and their desire to follow him are what give them solidity in their attempts to practice spiritual life. Often devotees wonder whether because of the disappointment, it means that none of Srila Prabhupada's disciples are qualified to be gurus, or whether we should not think of another, seemingly more practical system to avoid the chance of disappointment. Now, this is something which I addressed in the previous class, that a guru means a strict follower. Prabhupada said in a letter to Janardhan that generally the spiritual master belongs to the category of eternal associates of the Lord. Generally, he says Nitya Siddha. But he says, but there are others also who can act as gurus by strictly following, which means that the moment somebody is a guru by strictly following means, immediately it means it's conditional. Conditional means as long as they are strictly following, they are worthy of surrender. But the moment they stop strictly following, then they are not worthy of surrender anymore. This has been history, ISKCON's history. Out of the 11 gurus that Prabhupada appointed to initiate disciples, several of them fell down. So that's what Satsarup Maharaj is writing here. But the point is that is still not discourage other people to accept a guru and things like that. But so initially, in the initial days, it was understood that, not understood, it was thought that all the 11 devotees of Prabhupada appointed have all become pure devotees or something, they can never fall down. That was the understanding. So, but the point is, Prabhupada has not said that anywhere. He is very clear in his books, he is very clear in his letters. One who strictly follows the guru is capable of becoming a guru. The moment a person stops strictly following, he gets into Maya, and obviously he's not a guru anymore. So it's not a very complex thing. So in the last class, I mentioned that our relationship with Srila Prabhupada is both direct and it is also through the Guru and superior Vaishnavas. We have both a direct relationship and also a relationship through the Guru and other superior Vaishnavas. But the relationship we have with Prabhupada is unconditional. But whereas the relationship we have with everyone else, the Guru, Diksha Guru, Siksha Guru, any other superior authorities are all conditional. What is the condition? They have to be a strict follower of Prabhupada. Now someone may say, okay, before accepting a Guru, you have to be very sure. Yes, before accepting a Guru, you have to be very sure that he is a strict follower. But what can anyone do if he stops being a strict follower later on? That we cannot control. We can only see before we take initiation, is the Guru strict follower or not? After that, what happens? What can we do? And there is also another question, another thing which was brought up last class. Then, if we start thinking everything that the Guru is saying is right or wrong, then what happens? That is a psychological instability. I gave the example last time that when we are in Mayapur, how many times do we think of the boundary of Mayapur? But we are supposed to be aware of the boundary, though. Otherwise, when we come close to the boundary, and let's say previously you had barbed wire fencing, I guess, but now it's more some of it are walls and things like that. But we also have barbed wire. You're not careful, you cut yourself with the barbed wire. So anyway, the point that is only when we get close to the boundary, then we have to think about, hey, we're close to the boundary right now. We have to be careful. We should not, cut ourselves on the barbed wire. So like that, we need to know what is the boundary of Prabhupada's teachings. The spiritual master should not go out of that boundary. But normally on everyday life, how many of us think of the boundary? When you are in Mayapur, I've been living here 15 years. I don't think of hardly I think of the boundary. Only when I'm close to the boundary, this is the boundary of the scout. So like that, similarly with the Guru, one has to just follow. That's normal life. But when we come to the boundary, when the spiritual master is speaking something on the boundary topic, then some instruction which is very weird or something which is very strange, not coming from Prabhupada, then we have to think of what is this? Where did this come from? Anyway, so that does not affect our normal life of placing faith and going on with life blissfully. Okay. Often devotees wonder whether because of the disappointments, it means that none of Srila Prabhupada's disciples are qualified to be gurus, or whether we should not think of another seemingly more practical system to avoid the chance of disappointment. There is no blanket statement we can throw over this issue to say that none of Srila Prabhupada's disciples are capable to accept disciples, just because some of his disciples have failed in this regard. The point that makes them qualified is their own strict following of Srila Prabhupada. It is to Prabhupada's glory that he was able to take such raw recruits, people who had previously been eating meat and living for sense gratification, and turned them into Vaishnavas. Prabhupada turned Naradhamas to Narottamas. That is the point that he's making here. Any disciple who is strictly following Srila Prabhupada's orders has had to renounce more than just their breaking of the regulative principles. They've had to step into a whole mode of life to which they were not conditioned. They had to become childlike with Prabhupada. This is the point. They had to become childlike with Prabhupada. Means that children have natural instinctive faith in their parents. That's a quality of childlikeness. They had to become childlike with Prabhupada and do things they could never have imagined doing, such as going off to foreign countries to establish Krishna consciousness there. The power of their austerities and the strength of Prabhupada's blessings for their surrender have given them potency. I don't say this only looking to Srila Prabhupada's initiated disciples. He's saying this very clearly, that this is not referring only to, I don't say this only looking to Srila Prabhupada's initiated disciples. That same potency is being evinced and will continue to be evinced in the present generation of his grand disciples and in generations to come. This offering of a life to Srila Prabhupada's mission is more important qualification than any mystical qualification. The point he's making here is, Guru is not some mystical qualification you don't need to have. Just have to examine whether the Guru is a strict follower of Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada is the center. Since the personal identification with Srila Prabhupada is the source of every follower's potency. Note what he's saying there. Since the personal identification with Srila Prabhupada is the source of every follower's potency, no one in this camp should dampen another devotee's attraction to Srila Prabhupada or divert it to others. Srila Prabhupada is just as accessible now as he was before his disappearance. Part of ISKCON's mood in following Prabhupada is that even though such persons must take Diksha from one of Prabhupada's disciples and cannot receive Diksha from Srila Prabhupada himself, Srila Prabhupada is ever the founder Acharya of ISKCON. I mean, that's what he means. And thus, the central focus of our branch of the Sampradaya. Our worship of Srila Prabhupada is not exaggerated. All founder Acharyas in various branches are accorded similar worship. In ISKCON's case, although it is true that we are a branch of the Gaudiya Math to Prabhupada's connection with the spiritual master, and as such, we are also part of one of the four basic lines descending from Krishna. Srila Prabhupada began something that is distinguished enough from the main branch that it became a sub-branch in itself. ISKCON is not the same as the Gaudiya Math, and neither did Srila Prabhupada try to make it the same. His purpose was to apply the traditions of Gaudiya Vaishnavism to Westerners in a worldwide movement, and that included making adjustments for cultural disparities between traditional Indian Vaishnava cultural expressions and the lack of them in the West, and so many other adjustments that only a worldwide preacher such as Srila Prabhupada could understand. Those adaptations and adjustments form a part of Srila Prabhupada's emphasis and make those who accept and identify wholeheartedly with that emphasis his followers. To be effective, therefore, his followers have to teach and bolster faith in Srila Prabhupada and represent him effectively. Then people approaching ISKCON after Srila Prabhupada's disappearance will be grateful to have received Srila Prabhupada's association through such persons who have already been trained as Srila Prabhupada's followers. Now, this is a very important point. Then people approaching ISKCON after Srila Prabhupada's disappearance will be grateful to have received Srila Prabhupada's association through such persons who have already been trained as Srila Prabhupada's followers. Now, I want to relate an incident here. In the early 2000s, I was going through some difficulty in my Krishna consciousness. Although I had access to my spiritual master, His Holiness Jayapataka Maharaj, but because now he has more than 50,000 disciples, but in that time it was not any, it was quite a significant number of disciples, plus the amount of responsibilities that he had was, quite significant. So I knew that I wouldn't be able to get time from him to the extent that would be needed. To be needed, at least as far as my mind is concerned. So, and I knew that I'm not sufficiently qualified. I did believe in, I had and I have faith in reading Prabhupada's books. But the point is, I knew that I had to have some follower of Prabhupada to tell me what I should do. So what I did was, I wrote a prayer to Srila Prabhupada. Dear Srila Prabhupada, I wrote a prayer and I put that prayer in the Bhagavatam. Since the Bhagavatam is our deity. So I put that prayer in the Bhagavatam. And I mean, I wrote in that prayer, I specifically wrote to Srila Prabhupada, I begged him, please send me one of your stalwart followers who will help me, whom I can follow. I mean, because I needed that kind of quite a lot of association. So within a short time, I mean, unbelievably short time, I think maybe 1 month or even less than that. That's how I came in touch with His Grace. Krishna, actually, Prabhupada arranged it. It's a fact. I mean, that's how I came in touch with His Grace, Gopi Parandam. I didn't make an endeavor. Just Prabhupada made that arrangement. And that, if you notice, before my class, I always offer prayers. So I chant Gopi Parandam Prabhu's Pranam Mantra. For those of you who don't know, he is the one who finished the Prabhupada finished until 14th chapter of the 10th canto. The subsequent chapters of the 10th canto, the 11th canto, and 12th canto were done by Gopi Parandam Prabhu, Hridayananda Maharaj, and Dravida Prabhu. But Gopi Parandam Prabhu was a major contributor to that. And what happened was, by his association, my relationship with Prabhupada, it increased exponentially, not just a little bit, it increased exponentially. So this is what is the power of a genuine follower of Srila Prabhupada. When you associate with a genuine follower of Srila Prabhupada, you can always test this. I already said this in my last class. You can test a genuine follower of Srila Prabhupada. When you associate a genuine follower of Prabhupada, your relationship with Prabhupada would significantly increase and deepen. That's a test. The whole basis of their relationship, okay, I'll continue. The whole basis of their relationships in ISKCON will be that everyone is following Srila Prabhupada and helping to connect one another to the founder Acharya. This is the point. The whole basis of our relationships in ISKCON is that everyone is following Srila Prabhupada and helping connect one another to the founder Acharya. So the relationship with the founder Acharya is the very essence of a devotee's life in ISKCON. It's the very essence, that relationship with Srila Prabhupada. Okay, no one is denied Srila Prabhupada's shelter. In Vaishnava history, and particularly in the history of the Gaudiya Sampradaya, there is an unbroken chain of spiritual masters. This guru's disciples become the next gurus. When people come to ISKCON post 1977, they must take Diksha from one of Srila Prabhupada's followers. That is the ISKCON system, and it is based on the Sampradaya tradition. We've already discussed how the initiating spiritual masters in ISKCON have the duty to humbly present Srila Prabhupada's teaching, to facilitate every devotee's following and association with founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada. Please note, Sacharup Maharaj is very clear. He repeatedly makes this point again and again. To facilitate, the duty of the guru is to facilitate every devotee's following of Prabhupada and association with Prabhupada also, and to present only what he taught strictly in the parampara. The duty of the guru is to present only what Srila Prabhupada taught. Then no one will be denied a connection with the pure devotee Srila Prabhupada. Not now and not generations in the future. Srila Prabhupada will remain the Diksha Guru of those he personally initiated before his disappearance and the Siksha Guru of all those who come after, which means as a founder Acharya. Bhakti is a science, and following the Guru Parampara system is a part of that science. There is no need to invent a new system for the most basic tradition. Just give me a second. I just need to drink some water. Okay. Bhakti is a science, and following the Guru Parampara system is a part of that science. There is no need to invent a new system for the most basic tradition. No follower of Srila Prabhupada is being denied a shelter. Srila Prabhupada can appear in their hearts, their dreams, their minds. He can imbue their following of him with his own special quality of mercy. He can imbue their following of him with his own special quality of mercy. Whatever relationship we can imagine Srila Prabhupada as a beloved spiritual master can be experienced by all devotees, regardless of what year they joined, because the relationship with Srila Prabhupada is eternal. A very important point. Each of our relationship with Srila Prabhupada is eternal. Chakudan Dilojay, Janme Janme, Prabhu say. ISKCON's right to its own integrity. One point to note is that as Srila Prabhupada expresses a certain integrity and fixedness in following of his Guru Maharaj, and as Srila Prabhupada's followers take up that example and maintain a similar integrity and fixedness in their following of Srila Prabhupada, so ISKCON has a right to represent that integrity and fixedness without outside influence. Basically, he's trying to say, we don't care for what people think. Just like Prabhupada followed his spiritual master, we are supposed to just follow Prabhupada just like the way he followed his guru. Doesn't matter what the outside people may say. Although ISKCON's detractors have argued that ISKCON's close signs are a sign of weakness and politicking, ISKCON has a right to conduct its affairs according to its understanding of Srila Prabhupada's mission. It is not required to accept influence from other Vaishnavas that it feels will stress something other than what Srila Prabhupada emphasized. Now, a very important section, Ritvik, a pragmatic approach. The concept that Srila Prabhupada directly initiates followers after his disappearance is not something that he himself thought. Neither is it found in the teachings of the Gaudiya Sampradaya. Neither did it appear in ISKCON in the years immediately following Srila Prabhupada's disappearance. Rather, it is a concept that made its way into ISKCON around 1985 as a result of the frustration resulting from gurus falling down and abandoning their positions. The first essay to appear on this topic was by Karanamrita Das, printed in the Vedic Village Review. His subtitle was telling and true to the experience of the times. A pragmatic approach. Pragmatism means that truth is determined by whatever works best. In that essay, he admitted that Srila Prabhupada had established a system, but because we are unqualified to follow that system, it would be more practical to follow something we could do. The question sometimes asked, are we limiting Srila Prabhupada in saying that he cannot initiate followers after his disappearance? That's not the real discussion. The question more is, did Srila Prabhupada teach in his books, lectures or letters that the Ritvik system was what he wanted to establish after his disappearance? I will not discuss the intricacies of this question here, but I will say here that Srila Prabhupada's main teaching was that the disciple becomes the next spiritual master. Our becoming guru does not put us in our minds or anyone else's on the level of Srila Prabhupada. That does not mean we can avoid our responsibility to preach and to give people who come as a result of their preaching Srila Prabhupada's full shelter. The ISKCON Guru's qualification is that he very carefully represents Srila Prabhupada and links his own disciples to Srila Prabhupada's teachings. Srila Prabhupada said that our love for him will be proven in our willingness to cooperate with one another to maintain his institution. Therefore, Srila Prabhupada must be central focus. The ISKCON experience. Well, before I start this, I remember Ravindra Sarup Prabhu saying that once Prabhupada said there will be an ISKCON in the spiritual world. And he said his first reaction when he heard that was, oh no. It's okay. I don't know if we can relate to that. Okay. The ISKCON experience. That said, I have to acknowledge that ISKCON devotees have all experienced a lot of disillusionment and disappointment in regard to spiritual masters falling down. ISKCON has made mistakes. We began the worship of gurus after Prabhupada in a high-spirited way with the mistaken idea that there were only 11 gurus selected by Srila Prabhupada and that their authority was greater than the authority of the GBC body. These gurus also accepted worship even greater than what Srila Prabhupada has offered. Those godbrothers who were not gurus were often treated almost like disciples. In some cases, this led to a corruption that blighted ISKCON's spirit and caused confusion and ultimately attempts at reform. It also gave rise to disappointed devotees searching for alternatives. Some devotees became proponents of the Ritvik theory, and others left ISKCON and joined various branches of the Gaudiya Mutt. ISKCON is still in process. We can sympathize with people looking for a radical change in the system, because of our recent history. And we all want to avoid falling into the traps that cause those problems. Reform is an ongoing process. The movement needs to be brought to a greater level of purity. Leaders, and especially those taking the responsibility of accepting disciples, should be careful not to commit the same mistakes that were committed in the past. They should not claim ownership over the devotees and money. This is the point that I was trying to make in the beginning. Our identity, what's our identity? Srila Prabhupada's dogs, which means Prabhupada is the owner. That's the point that Saswatmar is making. They should not claim ownership, claim the gurus or others, GBC. Nobody can claim, even though GBC is Prabhupada appointed them to manage this account, but nobody can claim ownership. They can all, everybody can claim claim managership. Managership is fine. Just like in the world also, you have many Ishwaras, like Krishna. I mean, the demigods are Ishwaras. Prabhupada says they can many Ishwaras. The supreme among all the Ishwaras is Krishna, Parameshwara. But as far as proprietor is concerned, there's no multiple proprietors. There's only one proprietor called Krishna. Anyway, so in that sense, here, as far as ISKCON is concerned, no one can claim ownership over devotees and money except Prabhupada. They cannot claim ownership over devotees and money, and they should concentrate on making their sadhana strong and focused. They should also work to maintain the devotees' faith in their strict following of Srila Prabhupada and ultimately in Srila Prabhupada himself. Larry Shin summarized this point nicely in his essay, Reflections on Spiritual Leadership, the Legacy of Srila Prabhupada. I was reminded of images of a special holy man who by his erudition and personal piety, as well as by his traditional role, touched the lives of thousands of devotees in India, America, and around the world. I was also struck by the realization that for all of his extraordinary attributes, Prabhupada could not pass on the mantle of leadership, traditional roles for ISKCON. As a reminiscent about my interactions with Krishna gurus and devotees, which began in 1974 and intensified through the 1980s, I was struck by the realization that the traditional roles and scriptural erudition could be transmitted by teaching, but that the personal piety and deep faith that attracted devotees to Prabhupada could not. As I reviewed my interviews with devotees from the years just following the death of Prabhupada, I mean, he's referring to disappearance, I came to realize that many devotees and certainly all of the newly appointed initiating gurus spoke with the confidence and enthusiasm about their maturing Krishna faith that is almost always grounded in scriptural authority, that is in reciting a Krishna text or in Prabhupada's interpretations of those texts. It is true that some of the new gurus were noted for their ecstatic chanting or personal piety, but their claimed authority was grounded primarily in scriptural passages like those cited above. Most new gurus exhibited a confidence, even a cockiness, that if the scriptures said a guru was as good as God, then it was so forgetting that such claims must be grounded in the kind of personal humility that Prabhupada exhibited. The point that he's trying to make is, yes, it's not alone, it's not enough to say that, okay, the guru is representative of God, but he's trying to say that the guru should also exemplify the same personal humility that Prabhupada exhibited. In the early and mid-1980s, I talked with some gurus who were exceptionally bright and erudite in scriptural argumentation, but who had stopped doing Sankirtan themselves, even as they taught the importance of such preaching to new devotees. So he's saying that in the early and mid-1980s, he talked with some new gurus who were exceptionally bright and erudite in scriptural argumentation, but who had stopped doing Sankirtan themselves, even as they taught the importance of such preaching to new devotees. I met other new gurus who were talented organizational managers who had stopped chanting their morning rounds of japa and ultimately fell from their lofty positions because of immoral behavior. I met only a few new gurus who were impressive because of their humbleness and piety, and they have continued to provide leadership for ISKCON, even in the dark days of the early and mid-1980s. So the point that Sachumar is making here is like Prabhupada, when he appointed sannyasis also, he said that I knew that some of the sannyasis are going to fall down. But he said, but those who stick will set the example. So same thing here. It's not that every guru was not humble or pious, but did not exhibit the humility or piety, but they did. Those who did, they continue to provide ISKCON for leadership. They continue to provide leadership for ISKCON even in the dark days. Now, this refers not just to gurus, It also refers to all other leaders like GPCs and other temple presidents who, by their humbleness and piety, have set a proper example. What is the legacy that Srila Prabhupada has left for ISKCON? It is the legacy of traditional authority, parampara, scriptural erudition, and personal piety as necessary corollaries to a healthy and vibrant Krishna faith. Even as the reformers in ISKCON attempted in the mid-1980s to reduce ISKCON's reliance on relatively few gurus by appointing many new ones and to separate some managerial and organizational functions from the spiritual role of the guru, Prabhupada's legacy of personal piety and moral purity seldom was offered as a key to a new guru's success. He's talking about those days, but today this has definitely become quite well discussed that the gurus and leaders need to carry Prabhupada's legacy of personal piety and moral purity, and which is the key to the success of a leader. Prabhupada's legacy is a faith marked by a blend of head and heart, both focused upon God's divine mercy and compassion that separates the true spiritual master from the impostor. The good news is that there are many signs in America, Europe, and elsewhere in the world. The gurus and other leaders in ISKCON recognize that they must live and act in ways that are more consistent with their teachings. Conferences held in Europe during the past half dozen years reveal a more contrite and apologetic tone in public self-presentations by devotees. However, Prabhupada's legacy is richer still in the lesson it would teach to contemporary devotees that the quality of one's spiritual practice and growth must undergird one's theological and scriptural, that the quality of one's spiritual practice and growth must undergird one's theological and scriptural erudition and private and public actions. Now, this is very important. He's saying it's not just one's theological or scriptural erudition or public or private actions, but rather the quality of one's spiritual practice and growth. That should be the basis. His lesson is for the developing spiritual speaker. His lesson is for the developing spiritual seeker, not for one seeking a religious role in ISKCON as an institution. A very important point. That ISKCON is meant for a developing spiritual seeker. I mean, this applies to all of us. ISKCON is meant for the spiritual seekers, not for one seeking a religious role in ISKCON. In the final analysis, Prabhupada's life suggests that only the guru who's truly linked to Krishna by his or her own private and public devotion can serve as a conduit. Prabhupada used to use the expression transparent Vaimini, can serve as a conduit for disciples who rely upon the Vaishnava's disciplic succession. Over the years, many Krishna devotees have quoted to me numerous scriptural passages that confirm this view of their disciplic authority, but seldom have they seldom have they cited the faith development of Prabhupada as a model for their own development. Very important. The faith development of Prabhupada is a model. That's the real model for, as I said it also in the beginning, the faith development of Prabhupada as a model for their own development. This is the model for own development. With Prabhupada, the recitation of scriptural authorities was not really necessary to confirm his role of Acharya. Images of love-filled and ecstatic Prabhupada softly singing praises to Krishna is his legacy of God-centered love images, which can serve ISKCON and his leaders well in his absence. It is this legacy of a guru's devotion and humility before God, his piety, that Prabhupada asks his successors to emulate. What better legacy could a spiritual teacher have? Could a spiritual teacher leave to those who would follow him? Which means that it has to be manifest in the practice, not just teaching. It has to be manifested in the practice. That is exactly what he's trying to say as a Srila Maharaj. Ultimately, what ISKCON devotees want to do is not to leave ISKCON or take up the banner of things not taught by Srila Prabhupada in their disappointment. Rather, they want to get back to Prabhupada. This requires working from within the movement to effect reform. The GBC should also be open to discussing reform, but the process will not be effective in an environment of rebellion or anarchy. ISKCON needs leadership because it's a large organization. Srila Prabhupada's ambitious plan to influence the world toward the bhakti path seems almost impossible to realize, but this was the desire of the compassionate Vaishnava. His methods of realizing that goal included book distribution, temple maintenance, educational programs, prasadam distribution, and the elevation of those followers who had already joined. All of these projects require organization. To contend with opposition, both internal and external, also requires organization and single-mindedness. We have to protect ourselves through laws and regulation from undue internal competition or misunderstanding. The society's individual branches must be able to maintain their integrity, yet share the same vision as all other centers. Only by such organization can we assure that no individual member becomes corrupt and tries to mislead the whole mission. The GBC is an important feature of this organization. Therefore, it is vital that the GBC become responsive to the body of devotees and that the body of devotees cooperate within the system. Together, we can go forward, both in developing our internal Krishna consciousness and in carrying out Srila Prabhupada's mission. Allegiance to ISKCON is a way of expressing allegiance to Srila Prabhupada. We should not think of ourselves as lone aspiring Vaishnavas in the world, but as Prabhupada's followers, interested in maintaining, improving, and expanding his mission. Doing so from whatever position we find ourselves in life, whether living inside the temple or outside, single or married, is a testimony of our love and faith in Srila Prabhupada. We all recognize that our movement is imperfect. As Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur states, nothing is pure in the beginning. From impurity, purity will come out. Our movement will be rescued not by abandoning it or by changing Prabhupada's teachings, but by becoming the devotees Prabhupada wanted us to be, and by sharing that example and that happiness with the world. That's the end of the article. Title of the article, How All Generations Can Stay with Srila Prabhupada. This is from Dandavats. I'll share this article after today's class. This article, Giriraj Maharaj's offering, always remain Prabhupada's dog, how not to minimize Prabhupada. I'll share all of this. So we have finished 3 minutes before 5 o'clock. So 5 o'clock is the time to start questions. I was not sure whether I'll be successful in completing this paper today. Somehow with Prabhupada's mercy, it's happened. Okay, now we can open up for questions. Yes, ma'am.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, Dandavat Pranam Prabhuji. Prabhuji, my question is, now you said that we have, like Prabhupada used to tell that we have to chant more. His minimum prescription is like we have to chant 16 rounds per day. But he said that whenever we find time, we have to chant more. Is it like counted that what happens sometimes we will be occupied, we may not be chanting on the beads to say the numbers, how many more rounds we have done. But can we chant like without the beads or like that? So will it be counted as we are chanting more?
Yes, definitely. The idea is that, I mean, if you're not able to chant, at least you can do other devotional activities. Like Jayapatak Maharaj, my spiritual master, he relates an incident that when he was in ISKCON of Calcutta, he was one day he had taken a vow to chant 32 rounds. So one day Prabhupada came to the veranda, he was chanting there. And he asked, what are you doing? He said, I'm chanting 32 rounds. He said, you chant 16 rounds and go out and do the other work. Otherwise, who's going to do the other work? So it's not that we should increase 16 rounds at the cost of giving up other services that we are engaged in. But rather free time or the time which we may idly waste or which may somehow or other trying to squeeze in some time to chant more. That's what it means.
Yeah. Is it like that we can even like devote that time for reading at least books otherwise?
Yes.
It can be done, but it's not necessary.
What will happen is after you start chanting also, the taste for chanting will come.
Thank you.
Murli Govind Prabhu.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, Dandavat Pranam.
Yes,
Prabhuji, you explained that there should be gratitude for Prabhupada, whatever he has done to us and even the entire community, mankind. So, as an expression of gratitude, besides our sadhana and all, we should be ready to preach also. So sometimes what happens, to the new people, we try to preach, and in the process, suppose if they are not very responsive, we lose that momentum and interest. How to manage that, Prabhuji, please?
First of all, we are supposed to avoid people who are not interested. So we try with everyone. Okay, depending on how they respond, we also respond accordingly. It's not that we keep on trying with someone. Instead of that, we could spend our time preaching to other people. So Prabhupada said, it is not very surprising that people are not taking to Krishna consciousness. It is surprising that people are taking, because this is the age of Kali. Most people are not interested in Krishna consciousness or spiritual life for that matter. But so it is a wonderful thing that there are people who are interested. And the first teaching of the Bhagavad Gita is, do not be attached to the results. And Prabhupada repeatedly emphasized this particular point, that we have to simply try to carry out Prabhupada's order. Whether we are successful or not is not the point. Let me sincerely try. We are not supposed to be driven by success. We are supposed to be driven by Yasya Prasada Bhagavad Prasada. Are we trying to please Prabhupada or not? Like in the beginning, when the devotees hired a hall for Prabhupada to speak, I forget the name of the place. So it was empty, and then the devotees were, a few people were there, I guess, and then devotees were worried that Prabhupada will be disappointed. Prabhupada said, "Oh, did you see Narada Muni had come?" He said, "Devotees can preach even to the four walls." So Prabhupada himself set that example, that it's not a question of how many people and things are. I mean, he was very clearly interested in executing the mission of his Guru. That's why he repeatedly said, "I don't know what is the result. My Guru Maharaj told me to distribute books. So I simply tried that. That's all." So his mood was, I have to please my Guru Maharaj by doing it. Like even during Bhaktisiddhanta Thakur's time, what happened was that, Bhaktisiddhanta Thakur would appreciate devotees even if they sold one magazine, Krishna Conscious magazine. You would really appreciate that. So you could say, okay, what is that one magazine he sold? But it's not like that. The acharyas, first of all, they're so dear to Krishna. If they consider it worthwhile to sell one magazine, of course, we should try more. I'm not saying that. But the point is, the reason we are doing all this is for what? Yasya Prasada. That should be what we are focused on, not the results. Results will come by Krishna's mercy. We are not the controllers. Anyway. Is it okay?
Okay, Prabhuji. Thank you so much. Thank you very much.
Bankim Govind Prabhu.
Krishna Prabhu.
Yes.
Prabhu, you mentioned that you have established a relationship with Prabhupada more after you met one of
Gopi Parandar Prabhu.
Exactly. So does this mean we have to get an association with such an exalted devotee to establish a relationship, or what is the actual message, Prabhu?
No, I just said that by that encounter, my relationship with Prabhupada increased exponentially. Okay. And this is in general a true principle. Like if we want our relationship with Prabhupada to increase exponentially, we should try to seek the association of serious followers. It's a fact. It's a fact. We have to try. I went through a difficulty, so I really pray to Prabhupada. Yeah, but whether we go through a difficulty or not, we still need to look out. Let me try to find some serious followers of Prabhupada, try to serve them. So it is not that I did not have a relationship. I had a relationship, I had my spiritual master, everything was there. But then the kind of time that I needed one follower of Prabhupada somebody to help me out with the amount of time that I needed to solve the problem, and which Prabhupada provided. So whether you need it or not, still the principle, if the surest way to increase your relationship with Prabhupada is try to find some serious follower of Prabhupada, associate with him, and then it will shoot up.
Okay. So that's one of the means, Prabhu, apart from the books, right? Yes.
Because you have the book Bhagavata, person Bhagavata, right? You have the book Bhagavata, in which you are getting Prabhupada's association in one form, but then you also have his followers who are personifications of his teachings. So you associate with them, and then your relationship with Prabhupada will increase substantially. I'm not saying any follower. I'm very clear about it. Someone who's strictly following.
Fine, Prabhu. Thank you, Prabhu.
Now, of course, that does not mean that we become, okay, is this person strict follower, not strict follower? I'm talking, when I say association here, I mean to say the 6 exchanges which Rupa Goswami mentions, including revealing your heart and trying to get instruction for your personal life. But otherwise, in general, we are not supposed to be thinking so much in terms of, oh, is this person strict follower or not? We go to a temple, let's say there are so many opportunities to serve. Let's say serving prasadam to the devotees, serving charanamritam to the devotees, doing so many services to the devotees. There we are not supposed to think, oh, is he a strict follower, not strict follower? Because this is Prabhupada's institution. He has set up a certain set of activities there, which we have to participate of those activities. And there you have to just serve. But here I was talking about only when you need to take some personal guidance.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Vishnu Vandana.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, Dhanut Pranam.
Hari Om.
This is maybe slightly in connection with the previous question, Prabhuji. So, in fact, can you give some practices or anything that from your experience, how do we develop an absolute undeviated faith and surrendership to Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada, Prabhuji?
How do we develop it, you mean?
How do we develop absolute undeviated faith and surrendership towards Prabhupada?
One is you have to read his books. The other is we are doing right now, which is we are studying his life, which is the personification of his teachings. So we study his books and study his teachings. Study his books, study his life. And as Sasurumara right, we pray to him, we approach him as a person. We approach his followers who are strict followers. We approach his followers who are following strictly, and it's a combination of these things which will increase our faith.
Okay.
But it begins with reading. If you don't read, nothing happens. Actually, everything will be very, very unpredictable. If you start reading, then everything else will follow. Because in the reading, everything is there, all the instructions are there. So that we have to associate with the book Bhagavata and the person Bhagavata, then you have to associate with all these things will come up. So automatically will start, all these things will manifest automatically. But the root of all of it is to take up serious reading of Prabhupada's books.
Yes, absolutely, Prabhuji. When I started reading Bhagavad Gita as it is, that's when I exactly fell in love with Prabhupada actually. And then I want to develop more relationship with our beloved Srila Prabhupada. Thirst of that relationship. That's why my intensity of that question to you, Prabhuji. Thank you so much.
We have 2 questions from the chat.
2 questions from the chat. Okay. There are 5 chat messages, I think, right?
One is, can you please explain what is meant by a devotee who is pure and simple? From Harshita Sharma.
Was it the first question or that was the later question? I think there's a question before that. I think Dameshwara Dharmendra is asking some question.
Yes. That's right.
Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur sent few of his disciples to West to propagate Krishna consciousness. Maybe they were failure in their attempts. Does it mean they are not genuine in their attempts to propagate Krishna consciousness? Why we have to see only Srila Prabhupada is genuine based on the outcome of spreading the movement? It's not a question of whether they're genuine or not genuine. It's a question of whether they were empowered or not. Because here it very clearly says, in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, very clearly explained that only one who is empowered by the Lord can spread the Sankirtan movement. So we can understand that Prabhupada is definitely empowered. There's no doubt in it. That's why he's able to this thing. It's not a question that everybody can get empowered. Krishna decides whom to empower. But the credit of the others is they try to sincerely execute the mission of their spiritual master. So that is to their credit. So the success in this sense definitely needs that empowerment factor, which Prabhupada had. So therefore he succeeded. No, I mean, of course, whether it's not in our adhikar to think whether the followers of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, Prabhupada's godbrothers, whether they were genuine, not genuine. We can only take what Prabhupada speaks about in the Chaitanya Charitamrita. He says they did not form a GBC and different things were there. Those things he mentioned, which we can take. But beyond that, I don't think we should get into detailed analysis of why they failed and others succeeded. Prabhupada did not specify. He spoke about why the Gaudiya Math failed. That he said. That's because of the fact that they did not follow the instruction to have a GBC. But why individual preachers failed and all that, Prabhupada did not speak on that topic. So I would refrain from speaking on that because Prabhupada himself has not spoken on that. But what we do know is that Prabhupada, I mean, in the purport itself, he writes that very clearly. Unless one is empowered, one cannot spread the Sankirtan movement. We do know for sure that Prabhupada is empowered. So he succeeded. Okay. Arshita, can you please explain what is meant by a devotee who is pure and simple? Pure means without mixture of anything else. Anyabhilashita shunyam. Anyabhilashita means they have no desire other than the desire to serve Krishna favorably. That's the meaning of pure. Simple means the sensual, mental, and intellectual platforms. They give up the sensual, mental, and intellectual platform and accept the spiritual platform. Which means if, like his spiritual master had given the order, if you get money, print books. So Prabhupada did not try to analyze how printing books is relevant or how that is going to help or nothing. So if you get money, print books. That's all. That's called simple. So he's not trying to, or he did not think, how can I do this or whatever. It's just, he whatever his spiritual master told him, he did it. That's it.
Prabhuji, your mic is on mute.
Yes.
Muted, I think even I went on mute. Okay. So spiritually, okay, simple means that they are given up the sensual, mental, and intellectual platforms. They simply accepted the spiritual platform. That's all. So I don't know how much you all heard of what I spoke. I was trying to say that Prabhupada did not try to analyze when his Guru Maharaj said, if you get money, print books, why book printing is important, why this is important. He said, whatever my spiritual master ordered, I just did it. That's all. I mean, so I don't know what the result is. He said that so many times he said this. I don't know what the result is, which means that he's not worried about what the result is or he just, okay, my spiritual master said it, I will do it. That's all. So he went ahead and did it, and he saw how hugely successful it is. In fact, books are the basis of our movement. And some 4 or 5 years ago, I don't know, not 4 or 5, I don't know, maybe around that time. One day I was having breakfast, and I had this realization that I was always think, what happens if somehow or the other the institution of ISKCON collapses, or what happens if leaders fail? What's going to happen to ISKCON? We say 10,000 years and all that, right? So I was thinking. So then at that point, it dawned on me. That is why Prabhupada stressed so much on the books. Books are the basis. I felt that someone will read Prabhupada's books and be able to establish everything all over again. But then I told my wife before going to the office that this is a realization I had, but I don't know. I don't know if Prabhupada has ever said this or not, but this is the kind of realization I have. But until there's a proof of it, I will not speak about this to anyone. And just this is my intern. I don't know if it's true or not. So I went to the office at that time, and then Badrinaran Maharaj came to my office. At that time he was not Swami. I think I think he was not. He cannot take himself. Anyway, he came to my office and he said, "Prabhu, do you want to hear a story?" I said, "Yes, why not?" I mean, Prabhupada's story. He said, "Of course, why not? That's what we're looking forward to hearing." Right? So then he said, in 1973, Prabhupada was in Devasadan Mandir, Detroit. That's the Fisher Mansion, and he was with a group of disciples. He was surveying that Fisher Mansion. Suddenly he stopped, turned towards his disciples and said, even if all of you leave ISKCON, even if this happens, even if that happens, even if that, he said all these things. And he said, someone will read my books and reestablish the movement. So then I was just shocked because that's just what happened. I mean, that's the realization I had a few hours before. And on the very same day, out of the blue, someone just comes and just tells the past time they were personally present. So you see, what do you call it? The importance of the books is that if everything collapses, Prabhupada's, the books can help someone to re-establish the whole movement. So when Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur said, if you get money, print books, look at the significance it has. So Prabhupada said, he at least claimed like that okay, I don't know what is the result, I don't know, but I just try to follow the order of the Guru. Now, that is called simplicity, which means we don't have to think in terms of results and this and that and all that. He simply believed what his Guru Maharaj said. That's all. This is called simple. That one is not acting on the sensual, mental, or intellectual platform. One is simply accepting. Guru Mukha Padmavakya Chittete Kuriyait. Okay, any other questions on that? Albert Hall, England. I think that is for referring to where Prabhupada spoke about where Narada Muni Prabhu, in a difficult situation, like you gave example, I'm confused whether to pray to my spiritual master or Prabhupada, or is it same or different? Please enlighten. We can pray, we can pray to everyone, right? We can try to get everyone's help. Why not? So there's no, it's not that it has to be either or, it can be everybody, no? Okay. So why I prayed to Prabhupada at that time was, I was in touch with my Guru. He was aware of the situation. So, I just felt that, okay, I should just pray to Prabhupada, that's all. So it's not that, so you can pray to both Guru and Prabhupada. If you have the chance to talk to your Guru, you need to talk to him about the problem or whatever the situation may be. That itself may solve the problem sometimes. If that is not able to solve the problem, then what can you do? Then you have to, if you need more time and all that, so then you need to pray. Because in Krishna consciousness, generally advancement is not dependent on the time that we spend with our own Diksha Guru. It's not like that. Prabhupada is formed in ISKCON movement so that everybody is helping us to get back to God. So if sometimes the Diksha Guru is not able to spend so much time or whatever, there are others in the movement who will help us, because after all, we are one family. This is Prabhupada's family. So there's nothing to be thinking in terms of exclusive, my Guru, my this and all that. We're not thinking in terms of we're thinking in terms of Prabhupada. Okay. Sailesh Govinda Prabhu.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, Dandava Pranam, so Krishna Prabhupada. Prabhuji, I have a request. In our trying to understand and developing and enhancing the love for Srila Prabhupada, we quite often come across people who regularly misquote or quote Prabhupada, but misquote out of context, because Prabhupada has made many comments, sometimes seemingly contradictory comments because of time, place, circumstances, and context. But people manipulate those and misuse those. And more importantly, there are supposedly, from the external perspective, people consider many of Prabhupada's comments as being controversial. It would be useful for us as dedicated lovers of Srila Prabhupada to be able to arm ourselves to know what the context of those comments were, so that we can have a response. Things such as Prabhupada mentioning women are less intelligent. I'm just not quoting directly, but there are many comments Prabhupada made like that, which people pick upon on which we need to know how to respond and what Prabhupada's real thought and motive was when making those comments. So it would be really useful in understanding Prabhupada, his teachings and his moods, to also be able to have a proper understanding on some of those points and controversial points, so that we've got responses to the outside world to give very firm and supportive responses to. So I don't know whether that falls within the context of the breadth and the length of the course, but it would be, that was just a personal request. It many may or may not follow that, but
yeah, this is a good point that you brought up. We have not, this course, this is the first time that's being done. So we have not structured the course in terms of what it's going to include and what is not going to include. Rather, what we decided was, as the Leela unfolds, in the Leela itself, there will be so many contexts, right? So once we do the course once we finish this whole course, the course itself will give us an experience of how to create a handbook, or how to structure the course. So we're doing it as, I don't know how to put it, on a more spontaneous level at this point in time. And from there, we'll take it from there. So in my gut feeling tells me that things like this are unavoidable. It's going to come up in the Leela. There are so many pastimes of Prabhupada. Things like this will come up. And when it comes up, we'll definitely deal with it. In general, the approach that I'm going to take, I believe that's the only approach we should take, is that Prabhupada should be seen, one of the 26 qualities of a pure devotee is faultless, So that's the basic approach that I'm going to take. That whatever it is, we cannot say that Prabhupada said this because of his, I'm not saying you're saying it, I'm just saying generally, just talking generally. We cannot say that Prabhupada, because of his training in Scottish Church's college in a Victorian era, had some views about women. These are there on the internet. Propounded by devotees, some of them senior devotees. There are all kinds of opinions on the internet. Anyway, the point is that, first of all, we have to accept that Prabhupada is faultless. He is a Nitya Siddha. Nitya Siddha means what? There's no question of his being any time in Mahamaya. He's always under Yoga Maya. There's nothing called imperfection in Yoga Maya. Everything in Yoga Maya is perfect. So it's only a question of whether we have the ability to understand or not. If we don't have the ability to understand, let's leave it. But let's not give it an explanation which makes it faulty. So yes. So the first thing is that the life of a pure devotee is faultless, and activities of a pure devotee are faultless. Now, that's the basic platform. And second thing is, when we, I really agree with you that, misquoting and quoting things out of context has become like a disease. So we need to, whenever we speak on a topic, we need to be aware of all the different things that Prabhupada has said on the topic. There are so many topics where he apparently speaks contradictory things. So Prabhupada says, actually, there are no contradictions. The contradiction is only in the mind of the student. So we will do, as the course progresses, as the topics come up, we will deal with it as and when it comes up. But with this approach, that whatever as Prabhupada has said on this needs to be examined. If it's not already examined, it needs to be examined. And everything has to be looked at in a whole. Not that we reject, okay, this part of the thing is false, this is right. Nothing like this is right and that is false. All of it is right. Then we have to actually combine all of it right in such a manner that it does not contradict Prabhupada's own conclusions anywhere. Anyway, this is a hermeneutical topic, hermeneutical approach. We will deal with it as and when which come up, but definitely we're going to deal with it. As my gut feeling tells me, you can't avoid it. Otherwise, what's the point of teaching Prabhupada's life when suddenly something apparently controversial comes up and we say, okay, let's skip this now. We don't understand. If we don't understand, we don't understand. That's fine. But we cannot just skip it because it's inconvenient. We have to be proud of our Acharya. We have to be able to defend our Acharya. That is the nature of follower means. You have to be proud of your Acharya. You have to be able to defend him. Of course, if we don't know, what can we do? We can't defend. But otherwise, the mood should be that we don't know does not mean that Prabhupada is not right. We don't know means we don't know. Prabhupada is right, but we don't know who is right. But we cannot accept the proposition that this could have been come due to some training or some conditioning or those are basic. Those are inherently inconsistent with the concept of what a pure devotee is. So yes, I mean your suggestion is well taken, and Vidwan Gauranga Prabhu and me, we already discussed this several times that are we going to deal with these topics or not, and we just decided that as and when it comes up, we'll deal with it.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna. Premananda Prabhu is asking why study Srila Prabhupada. Actually, the paper is not titled Why Study Srila Prabhupada's Life. That's a title which I gave. That's why in the subtitle I said this is best explained in a concept. This concept is best explained in a following article by Satsarup Maharaj. The article's title is How All Generations Can Stay with Srila Prabhupada. I'm going to share that. I'm going to also share Giriraj Maharaj's offering, and I'm also going to share today what I wrote. What I showed on the screen, how not to minimize Srila Prabhupada. Why not to minimize it?